Hello, wonderful people. I'm looking at the wrong end, aren't I? That's wrong. It's the wrong side of the camera. To apologise. So, good morning. What's Working Wednesday video today is all about how to feel confident every time something or someone challenges you. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Cheryl Andrews, the founder of Step by Step Listening, also known as the Listening Detective, and I train people to listen to themselves without judgment or criticism. Hi Susie. Ask them to ask powerful questions that really help them get understanding of themselves, but more importantly, develop the resources so that they can listen to and process all of the stuff that's around them, the feedback, the reactions, the responses of other people. And one of the major things that I know for me personally and my clients is that over time is that we become more confident to actually deal with when something or someone challenges us. So how I work is that we take the statement. So if what you want is to, I'm going to just read it out, feel confident every time someone or something challenged you or challenges you. How we do it is we actually take the word. If you go through the clarity process in the book, Manage Your Critic, From Overwhelm to Clarity in 7 Steps, the first thing is is curiosity. So you ask a question. And the second step is be curious about the language. So in this case, if you want to feel confident, ask yourself questions about it. So what kind of confidence? I want you to think about today, a time when you were confident. It may not be, it might only have lasted for a nanosecond, but try and tune into what that confidence is like. If your brain is in overwhelm at the moment and you're running on chemicals and stress, there's a good chance right now you may not be able to go there because your brain just can't compute it, and that's fine. Take a deep breath and just remember that the first step for you then is how to get back to that place of curiosity. How are you going to bring yourself back to that place where you're open and willing to learn? You might need to take some deep breaths right now. You might need to take some time out, go for a walk. You might need to do some drawing or writing, or just simply be with however you are right now. Because if we're in stress, we've been challenged, we've been irritated, our brain is going to be in the survival brain, the reptilian or the mammalian, and all the blood and the oxygen is going to go from the brain to the hands to be able to fight, flight or freeze. And we haven't got it up here in the thinking brain. We haven't got it in the learning and the clarity brain. So we won't be able to process so much. So if asking that question, you're kind of already, you're all feeling tingly and fizzy and your body's kind of like agitated, then just take a moment and think about what needs to happen for you to get curious first. That's the first step. When you get to that place of curiosity, then the next thing to do is actually think about that word confident. And if you genuinely can't, maybe the way your memory recall works, maybe just the fact that it says feel confident, maybe you're not very kinesthetic, that's just the way your brain works, that's fine. Then use your imagination. Imagine what it would be like for people that you see that are confident. What do you hear and see outside that tells you they're confident? And what do you imagine or guess was happening inside? Because you'll have the fact that you say you're not means you have a measure of it in some way. So the first thing to do is think about those words. And the other words I'd look in this sentence would be what kind of every time. With things like confidence, remember people want to be brave, courageous, strong, patient, all those things. Just check in with yourself as a reality check. Is every time realistic? And it's okay if it's what you want, it's absolutely every time. However, I will say to you, things like confidence, anger, joy, love, all of them are temporary and they're transient. But the most important thing is, how do you get back to it? Can you get back to that confidence quicker than you would before? So if something challenges you, just check in with yourself. Maybe I'm being challenged that, could I do it every time? Excuse me. My throat's obviously just sort of disagreeing that maybe I'm backing down on the every time because it's a statement I wrote out. But it's about, for me, where I'm at, maybe I will challenge myself to see whether I can have confidence every time something or someone challenges me. Maybe that will be my challenge. Right now, I'm personally really happy with that I can, if I feel challenged, I can step into confidence really quickly. So if I can do it quickly, that's good enough for me at the moment. But that's just interesting as I'm saying it out loud to you guys. So let me know for you, would being able to change your state into a very confident, from challenged to confident, be good enough? Or do you want to be confident every single time? And let's have a discussion about that, because I've written it down and now I'm reading it out to you. I'm now having to take it more seriously and I'm having to be more curious about it. And the other one is someone or something that's challenged you. Be curious, what do you mean by challenge? I know that when I first started coaching, that sometimes me just asking someone a question they didn't know the answer to, they felt like they were being challenged. I've heard people who've had staff members or clients or their children or their partner has said something, and because it didn't agree with them, their definition of that was challenged. So the most important thing with this challenge is to unpack the drama. What is it you actually hear and see? What's the story that you tell yourself? And then what's the impact? How does that make you feel? Because whatever the challenges are, they're each one of them, the person or the thing, there is a good chance that there is a kind of behavior going on. You have a story that you tell yourself, and that makes you feel something. Okay. And if you can separate those all out, those behavior bits, sometimes just changing the story. So like when someone asks me a question, instead of me thinking, oh, well, they're challenging my authority, for example, or they don't trust me, or whatever other story I might be telling, I could have that story that when they ask me a question, they're curious, they're interested. By changing that story, I could change how I feel. So play around with it, challenge. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. And the most important thing here is that you start with being curious. Notice where your attention is. When you start talking about it, is it over there blaming other people? If our critic is really active and we're saying, if other people did this and other people did that, one of the things I've been curious about with some of my clients recently, we've been really looking at what's the positive payoff for criticism. And one of the things that people have started to notice is when they criticize other people, they get a sense of relief. It's like, well, it's not my responsibility. It's not my fault. It's not my problem. And so what the criticism is giving them is time. Parking a problem. It's not my problem. So wouldn't it be great if we could stop the criticism, and instead of criticizing ourselves or others, we simply gave ourselves some time to process? So have a think about that today. Think about, how much, where is your A in the attention? Where's your attention when you're thinking about this? If you want to be confident, are you thinking it's something you've got to do, or is it if other people will be more encouraging, etc.? Because when you put it over there and you make it their problem, it kind of means there's nothing you can do. And whilst the benefit might be temporarily that you feel a bit better because the pressure's off, there's likelihood that relief is temporary, as in confidence is temporary, love is temporary, all of those things are temporary. So if it's a feeling of relief, it'll go, and then you'll be back in that cycle. So it's okay to say, well, what I'd like them to do is this, and what I would like to do for myself is this, and what I'd like to happen for the relationship, but give all of it equal opportunity. So be aware of your attention. Also notice when challenging or being challenged, what works about it, what doesn't work about it, and what needs to work better. If we've had an experience where something really challenged us in the past, there's some real evidence out there. I was reading the book, or I'm listening to the audiobook called The Messy Middle. And he said yesterday, in the chapter I was listening to yesterday, it was basically about the fact that when we voluntarily put ourselves through suffering, so he said, we change things that makes it a bit uncomfortable for us. It's not our normal routine. So let's say, you move the chairs around in the house, or you decide to do a different routine or a different course of things. When you voluntarily put yourself through a challenge or some kind of change, then your body has to adjust. If you move something or move it, and I've done it before. I've moved the bed in the bedroom, and then I keep sort of like, oh my God, I keep getting in the wrong side of the bed. But if you don't change things around, your brain doesn't create the muscle to be okay with change. So it was saying basically that if you voluntarily, you volunteer to suffer through change or challenge, when you get involuntary suffering because somebody else or something else challenges you, you'll be more resourced and more resilient because you are used to the change and you become flexible. So one of the ways to feel more confident with something or someone's challenging is to challenge yourself. And that challenge, I used to think of challenges like climbing Mount Everest, but for so many of my clients, that challenge is learning to shut up. When somebody else is not doing what you want to do, you might keep nagging them, you might keep trying to push them. And actually, the challenge might be to keep quiet for a day, not say a thing, not complain, not criticize, not say anything. So thinking today, what kind of challenge could you do that would start to help you be more comfortable with challenge. Reflection is really about recognizing, hello DL, it's lovely to see you both today. Reflection in the process is really thinking about what are other people reflecting back to you, and what is the feedback that you're giving yourself. So if you talk about challenges, I used to think of challenges as something where I'd fail, because I never thought I was very good at challenges. And then I realised, I was having a conversation with a friend a couple of weeks ago, and I thought, actually, I don't really want any more challenges in my life, because I've got enough challenge on trying to write the book and not trying, I'll reframe that. I am writing the book, growing a business, caring for my family, wanting to get fitter, wanting to lose weight, changing the way that I eat. I've challenged myself a lot. And I was actually saying I don't really want any more challenges, but I've realised that the way challenge used to make me feel was like I was going to fail. And so when I started looking at what challenge is like and what kind of feedback I give myself, one of the things we can do is actually be aware of the story that we have attached with challenges or challenge. What does challenge mean to you? Does it bring excitement and joy and lovely feelings, or does it like, oh my gosh, it's going to be hard? So you've got two choices. You either change the word and have be comfortable with being asked questions, whatever you think the challenge is, or you change what that word means to you. And I've started now to realise that I love a challenge rather than, I can't take any more challenges. So just changing that story, that reflection, that feedback that I'm giving myself can have a massive, massive difference. Intention, that's really about knowing that you're in the drama triangle or not. So thinking about challenges and when you're feeling confident. If you're in drama, if you're blaming other people, you feel like the victim, then you really want to get into the karma cycle where you're thinking about, what do I want to have happen? How do I need to be? What kind of resource or support do I need? Take action, review it. And so you go through that cycle. So just be aware of your intention. What is it good for you and all of the people involved? Is that challenge? So the challenge might be communicating something to people, but be aware when you want to feel confident. Sometimes I've had people talk about confidence before, and one of the reasons they stop themselves from becoming confident is because they're worried about becoming arrogant. And they're worried about what other people will think, that they're boastful or they're bragging. So that's a really good example of intention. If you want to be confident, but you've got drama going on, and you've got a conflict internally with yourself that, I want to be confident, but I don't want to be seen as big-headed, then you have to get clarity. You have to go, what does that confident mean to you? What would people hear and see? And maybe have a look at the scale. When does it tip from arrogant to confident, and where's the tipping point, so that you get really clear when you're in that kind of confidence that works for you. Just seen a comment from Susie. I'm just going to try and I've got to get different glasses, getting them on Saturday. Challenge to me is something that stretches you, whether it's physically or mentally, and I love them. I found that if someone says something can't be done, I see it as a challenge to show it can. It's funny actually, because that's probably why you and I work well in a partnership, is because I'm now, after reading Steve Judge's book, Don't Lean on Your Excuses, and listening to the book, The Messy Middle, I'm starting to realise that when people used to say to me, oh, it can't be done, I was so gullible. I would believe everything that was said to me. And I'd immediately go, oh, okay then, rather than not think, oh, God, how can I do this? And what I know is that if the intention is there that I really want to do something, like if you really want to feel confident when someone or something challenges you, you will find a way. And I've always believed that. I've said that for ages, for everybody else but myself. Okay, I really believed it for everybody else. I believed that I could help anybody else to believe in themselves. But what I didn't do until about 4 or 5 years ago was take my own advice, which brings me on to the T in the clarity process, which is trust. And trust is built through repetition, patterns, processes, and experience. So you do something, you get the result, and that proves to you that what you do is what you work. So the way to actually feel more confident when something or someone challenges you is to start to notice what works. What is your process? Understand your own patterns. Notice what happens just before challenge. And the more you know your own process, when maybe when there's a challenge, you might have a sort of gasp of breath, and I might have a little bit of a panic. I don't know what's going on. Feel threatened, whatever might go on, but you know that's part of your process, and you know that when you take the next breath, you'll go, what would I like to have happen? And you're recently I had an experience where somebody said something to me and it triggered an old pattern. An old button was really pushed, and I remember my face going really red. It was literally a couple of weeks ago, and I felt mortified. I just burst into tears because I was so didn't expect to what I thought was going to happen didn't happen, and I really wasn't expecting it. But what was lovely for me, because I understand my process and how I deal with change and how I deal with challenge, is I knew, I felt myself take a breath and go, whatever happens, this feeling you're having right now, Cheryl, is temporary. It's not going to last. You know it's going to go. This person, this situation, this thing is not going to last forever. And you are and you will be okay. And that, to be able to switch it within minutes, was so lovely. It didn't stop me having that initial feeling because, I wasn't happy that I'd done something that had upset somebody. But it did mean that I was resourced to switch it. Now, in the past, that would have floored me. I'd have been having a conversation in my head over and over and over and over again. I would have talked to 100 people about it. I would have gone over about it. I'd have cried. I'd have down tools. I wouldn't have been able to do anything. But because I know my process for dealing with challenging situations, I recognise I'm here in this part of the process. And I know the next bit is to tame the time monster. I know that that's the bit that I've got to take there. So be aware of your own process. When you're challenging yourself or you're being challenged, when challenge is really working for you, that's like what? And what happens just before? And what happens just before that? And I use Post-it notes, but I literally Post-it note the step-by-step process out, which is where the step-by-step listening comes in. We're listening for what are the nuances, what are the processes. If you've got a metaphor for it, then it can help you emotionally resource yourself, because it's so for example, if challenge for you is like climbing a mountain, I can quickly go, right, actually, we're about 2/3 up. I'm going to take a look back and look at how well I've done. I'm going to enjoy the view for a minute. And I can also remember what it feels like to get to the top and have that perspective around the whole side. So I know that when I'm in the middle of the challenge, it can feel hard. It can feel like all I can see is going up the hill. But I also know when I'm doing challenge at my best, is that when I stop and look back. So I spent a lot of time this week, actually. We've been going back over in Step by Step Listen Head Office. We're going back over the data, looking at who our ideal clients are, who are the clients we've loved working with, what is the change stories we've had, what have we done to make a difference. So I'm on that climb trying to, wanting to get more clients, and it's feeling very challenging, but I've stopped. I've looked back and I've really enjoyed the journey. I've looked back at where I've gone. And so for me, that's because I know my process. If I'm finding it too hard to go forward, the best thing I can do is to stop and be in this moment and know that whatever I'm thinking or feeling right now is going to pass. That's my present tense thinking. And I can go back and look at what's worked. And I can look at where I've come from and look at what's different. And I'm doing that with everything now, my eating, my fitness, my goal setting for my business, my personal relationships, everything. And it's working really, really well. And the last bit is you and your story. It's just being aware right now, if you just wrote down your story about what you feel about challenges. So Susie, you've put that you love it if somebody else says you can't do it. But because I work with you and you work with my process, I'm going to challenge you. What happens when you tell yourself you can't do it? Does that have the same impact, or is it only when it's external, when somebody else comes from you? Is it when somebody else, then you're like, I'm going to prove you wrong? Are you able to tap into that resource, that energy, that feeling, that drive that's there when someone else says you can't? And do it is it the same or different when you say it? Do you ever say you can't do it? And just be curious about it. I don't know. There's no things around this, but anyone who's watching the video right now, I want you to think about what is the story that you're telling yourself about challenges. Does that story serve you? And if it does, how long for and how often? Think about your time monsters, because often these stories are great for certain periods of time, but in certain situations, and they work and what doesn't work about that story? Because I'm really starting to be curious about the fact that when we, I don't know, maybe if you have a meltdown, maybe you feel, instead of being confident with challenges, you just find yourself crumbling, all right? You're absolutely melting. So I had a meltdown, I confess. It wasn't very long this time. I mean, my meltdowns used to last for ages. I had a meltdown a couple of weeks ago, and I really hit the wall, and I got all my old emotions back, and I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do it. And then what I've realised is what a meltdown does for me, what works about the meltdown, right? What is it that works about it? What I've realised is meltdowns give me a distraction. By having the tears or the ranting or the talking, it stops me from having to feel it. And actually, now that I know that's what a meltdown's doing, I can choose just to stop feeling it. I can choose to not think about it for a half a day or a day, can just give myself the break. So therefore, I get the rest from the thinking without all the chemical stress and reaction going on in my body, which then doesn't help my well-being at all. So whatever's negative or, not working so well in your life about the being challenged bit, don't discount it. Go through the clarity process, look at the language, look at where your attention is, look at the feedback you're giving. Think about your intention. Are you coming from a place of drama, or are you being strength and solution focused? Trust your process. When you do meltdowns at your best, that's like what? What's really good about the meltdown? What's the first thing that happens? What happens just before? When you trust your process, for being scared, for being angry, whatever that process is, when you understand it, you can find out where the value is in it, and you'll be able to use those resources. Sometimes, we talked Monday at the drama free conversation course, we were talking about anger. Some of the best music, DL, you probably relate to that. Some really great music, some great artist work comes out from people who are expressing their anger and their frustration or their sadness. When you think of ballads, that's the word I'm thinking of. They come from places of, where we've got what might be deemed negative emotions. So some of our best creativity comes from those emotions that others may label as negative. So if we continue to use the clarity process and we continue to actually map through whatever it is that we want to have happen, then we can have we can have strategies. We can have those answers we want to go through. Now, I would really love to put it out there to you guys. I'm going to asking them is to come and join us in the Manager Critic group if you haven't already done so, because I really want to start from the 1st of November in the group thinking about what is it that we would like more of. So thinking in line with my new book, do more of what you love, delegate and ask for help with stuff you don't, and ditch the critic that says you can't. What would you like to be more of? So in this case, would you like to feel more confident when people are challenging you or something's challenging you? Is there anything else that you'd like to feel more of? Because I'd really like to start doing some coaching activities, doing some live calls in the group so that we can help you be resourced to manage change in your life. Because when we can manage change, life becomes so much easier. And then, you know what? In Steve Judge is a great example. His book called Don't Lean on Your Excuses. He was somebody that prior to his car accident, he always challenged himself. He always set goals. He always measured results. He knew that whether he was making progress or not, but he never ever gave up on his goal. He would just push forward. Now, if he hadn't had that as a skill, if he hadn't developed those resources in before the accident, there's a good chance that when the doctor says you won't ever walk, he'd have gone, oh, okay then. Right, and then dealt with the fact he was going to be in a wheelchair. But he didn't. He went, that's not an option. I have to walk. I have to run. That's who I am. That's how I cope in life. That's my joy, but it's also my stress reliever. I love that adrenaline that you get from running. I'm not having that taken away from me. And so he set himself a goal, and he had to grow back 4 inches of his leg, and he had to walk on it in order for the bone to grow. It is, when you read it, you're just like, oh my gosh, that's commitment. That is getting through challenges. But I truly believe that he got through that because of who he was as a person before, because of those skills and resources. And we can all get better at creating and manage change. And if we share that experience in Manager Critic Group, and we support each other with our change stories and how we overcome challenge and how we deal with confidence, all of our stuff, whatever the words are, it doesn't really matter about the language. It's about us getting a common understanding of how we experience it. I truly believe that we can hit that road in 2020 and we can have the best year ever. So I'd love to hear, I don't think there's any more comments. So, oh gosh, there is one there. Susie, I didn't see that one. Let me just do this. Interesting question. I don't have the same confidence if I say it myself. It's usually if someone says something can't be done, not necessarily if they say I can't do it. Fabulous. It's great awareness to know that. A lot of the clients I work with, that is quite common. And sometimes it comes from this is where drama sometimes is good. We come from a rescuer. If we see that someone says something can't happen, and we can see they're disappointed. So I'm making this up. This is my story, Susie. It might not be yours. But generally I have the same thing. If somebody outside of me is going, oh, I can't do it, because they look so disappointed, because they look so dejected, and I don't like them not being happy, my big driver is I want everyone to be happy, I find a way to help them make that a reality. And when I can see it and feel it outside of me, it's not my pain, and therefore my cognitive brain is all working clearly and I can work it out. When I don't feel like I can do it very well, what I know happens is the stress chemicals go off in my brain. I can't think very clearly and I can't see it and I can't map it out. And that's why when I came across Clean Language as a coaching tool and somebody was outside of me reflecting my stuff back out, and I learned to post-it note it, I learned to put things in different space, I realised that when I look at myself with that same conviction that I'm going to do everything I can to make you happy, Cheryl, and I really reflect back and really give myself the feedback the same as I would give to somebody else. I did need help to be able to see and hear myself. I didn't recognise that some of the times that's what I was being like. But when I catch that criticism now of myself and sometimes other people, that's when I can convert those challenges. So it's really worthwhile, Susie, and I hope you do take the time to think about when someone else says, oh, it can't be done, what is it that you hear and see out there, and also what happens inside for you. What is it that reflects back to you? What emotion does that, what's the impact it's having on you? Because there's a really good chance it creates an emotion of some sort. And if you can tap into that emotion and you can understand it, that's when you can harness that as a tool and resource for yourself to create change. When you feel like, oh, it can't be done, I've tried everything, nothing's working, it's like you can become that mentor, that teacher for yourself that you are for other people, and keep that motivation and keep that drive that needs to be there to get through any change or challenges. Hope you found today's video useful. It's great to have people on. It does make my day when I'm not talking to myself completely. I look forward to hearing what other people have got to say about the video later. But please join us in the Facebook group Manager Critic, and those are already in there. Please come and tell us, what are your challenges right now? What can I do and what can we do as a community to help you get through those challenging times? Lots of love. Have a fantastic Wednesday. Speak to you all soon. Bye bye.